I am so grateful to have an opportunity to share this broadcast. For those who are yearning for encouragement, support, navigation tools of how to move through this. Okay, 1 second. Okay, I want to make sure the the sound is working. Can somebody tell me if there is sound? And we're gonna start in a couple of minutes. Hi everyone, it's Katerina Satori. I am coming to you from beautiful sunny California. And okay, hopefully the sound is working. Let's see. Don't see the comments. On the live stream, you gotta wait for the comments to come. So I trust we are good. And in this live stream, I wanted to share with you something from experience. I find the most potent and practical wisdom comes straight from our direct experience, right? And the teachings on life and death, 1 second. Okay. For some reason, the live stream gives me these notifications. So I'm going to check. Okay. Okay. 1 second. I'm going to check on my other platform. Okay. Yes? Okay. Yeah, sound is good. Okay, the most important is to check the sound, because if the sound is not working on the live stream, it's really disheartening to realize that there is no sound. Hi everyone. Okay, we have the sound. Let's begin this contemplation together. I wanted to weave energetics predictions for the year 2025, which is only 2 months away. I wanted to bring you a very powerful myth, and a myth is a universal truth that can help us connect to a much bigger reality and a bigger picture. And today's myth is going to be a myth of Egyptian goddess Isis. And what we can learn from the symbol, from the storyline, through the processes of life that are told in that great myth, and also the alchemy of death and rebirth, because it's a very natural part of life. It will come to all of us, it will come to all areas of our life. Sometimes it comes to us in the area of health, and we are given initiation through the disorientation of our health. And this was my first encounter with the cycle of death and rebirth, when my health was in crisis. And Spirit brought me to my knees and showed me the very first, the very first initiation, right? The soul awakening. And every death gives you an opportunity to have a new beginning and to walk into a new reality. And one of the principles of this transmission, one of the deep teachings that life has taught me, is that death can be a paradigm shift. It not only can be a process that accelerates you into your most authentic, your most courageous, your most embodied version of yourself, it can also be a paradigm shift. So this is another nugget that I would like to share in this live stream, of how profound the alchemy through death and rebirth. So this metaphorical death can come to us in the area of health. It can come to us in the area of business. We will go through experience where we will feel like our business model is collapsing, our business is dissolving, the old version of who we were and the tools and the structures that were supporting us are dissolving. And I have experienced this in a very direct way as a mentor. And life has been bringing me clients who were going through death and rebirth over and over and over. So I could really see this journey and this map, and I work with very strong, very ambitious, very proud people who shy away from asking for help until they have to. So a lot of times people come to me when they are on the threshold of metaphorical death and they need support in making that crossing. So one of the ways that my mind works, my mind is very archetypal, and I like to map these deep soul experiences so we can orient ourselves and navigate ourselves and also lean on the tools and processes to go through this sacred initiation with less and less fear each time. And eventually we can become even joyful in the process. We can begin to see that when death comes to us, it's a signal that we outgrew our identity. We outgrew what used to work for us, and it's time for us to get into the cocoon and dissolve into nothingness and stand naked in the unknown, and to trust that our wings will open, right? They will open and they will bring us forward. So this is kind of like the threads of this transmission. I also really wanted to bring very practical tools, right? What is needed when you are in the thick of the process of death, of the process of alchemy. And if anybody is new to my work, my name is Katerina. I walk the path of the mystic. I'm a devotee of the cosmic mother or divine feminine. And I mentor, I teach, and I share these transmissions online to help those who need it. And I deeply believe that we are moving through these experiences together. So when I received a couple of emails when I was talking to my friends, and I recently went through my own cycle of death and rebirth, right after I went through a Kundalini awakening. I just came back from Peru, in the mystical land, and I had the most profound experience of nirvana, samadhi, the most profound opening of divine fire within me. And when I came back home, I began my descent. And I found myself in very thick fog and not being connected to any inspiration, feeling creatively flat. And that's the symptoms, right? When you find yourself in that space, suddenly you, the visionary, not connected to your vision. You, the one who inspires others, not feeling inspiration within. You, always having encouraging word for others, struggling with the grips of self-doubt. That's how you know you are approaching a descent, right? And it can be very, very challenging experience. And this is why I'm here to offer you a map of how to see this process and to see the beauty of it and to see the gift of it. 1 second. Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure we still have sound and it's good. So, my dear ones, there was so much writing that coming through for me, and I said, you know what, I need to speak, I need to give this a voice, because with acceleration of consciousness on the planet, the cycles of death and rebirth will accelerate, right? So we will be going through these cycles more frequently right? Why? Because this is the most powerful way to transform us into a new version of ourselves. The gift of this alchemy, the number one gift, is your new expression, most authentic voice that wants to be born, right? So when spirit, life force, the divine stops everything in your life, and you feel restricted on every level, you don't see the vision, you don't feel inspiration in your heart, that's how you know you are entering the descent, right? You're entering the descent. It's very similar, like if you work with plant medicine, if you worked with, let's say, ayahuasca, right? I was, I'm a, been working with that medicine for many, many years. But if you have any psychedelic experience, and when a psychedelic force is coming at you and to you with a very strong force, the most wise thing to do is to breathe and not resist it. The moment you start fight and resist the experience, it's only going to grip you even stronger. So I'd like to bring this metaphor that when we go through a cycle in our life, a cycle of uncertainty, a cycle of lack of vision, a cycle of big confusion, the most ineffective way to deal with it is to fight it. And there's going to be a part of you that will want to fight it. So don't judge yourself, right? The part of you that will want to fight it is your ego. And what is happening in the death and rebirth, the ego death needs to happen. And the ego is a part of us that thinks it's in charge. It's a personality construct, right? And for the soul, your soul power to come online in a bigger way, it's a process of letting this old identity, your ego, die. And the ego is invested in two things: looking good and feeling certain. When you go through the process of death and rebirth, your fears come up, right? You're standing in this space of uncertainty, and your ego begins to bring up all these thoughts of what you may lose, of how everything will collapse or whatnot, and you are just standing on this shaky ground. And this is where the most intense experience called portal of fears. You're approaching and approaching this gateway where you're given an opportunity to be with fear in a new way. And it's only when you're able to go through the fear in a new way, you're able to pass through that portal. And I'll share with you how I learn to work with fear in a new way every single time I go through this process of spirit just pausing everything, pausing the momentum, pausing inspiration, pausing vision, right? It's like, whoo, cosmic pause. And no matter what you want to do, no matter what your plan is, no matter what what your idea of needs to happen is, you are in the pause. And you get to be there, and you get to hold the tension of not knowing what will happen next. And while you're there, you're given an opportunity to look at fear from a new perspective. The way that we work with fear, beloveds, is really powerful. Fear is a physical experience, a mental experience, and an emotional experience, right? So you got to start, you see it on 3 levels. The very first level, that is the easiest to access, is the mental level, where you simply acknowledge to yourself, there is a fear in my experience. I am going through experience of fear. Simply saying it to yourself gives you an opening to the next level, which is emotional. And this is where you can touch into the depth of your grief, of your uncertainty, of the holy mess of the human experience, of how fucking vulnerable it is to be human sometimes. You know you're divine, you know you are connected to all, you know there is a higher intelligence, but when you're going through a death process, you feel removed from your knowing. You feel in the grips of the experience, and it feels like you're facing real death. And the emotional level of fear is very irrational, it's not logical. It's like a tidal wave that is coming over you, right? And this is where the tools that I use, they're very somatic. The first is intellectual. I'm going through some tough stuff. I'm going through an experience of fear, intellectual. Second, I'm going to allow myself to really name what I feel or to feel what I feel. And this somatic release is so important, right? I remember when I discovered the process of like screaming into the pillow or beating the pillow. It doesn't look pretty. You gotta get primal, right? To get it out of your body, you gotta get primal. You can also lay on the ground, grass, grab grass or whatnot, but it's a very primal experience where you allow the emotion to move through you. And when you allow the emotion to move through you, only then you'll be able to drop to the next level, the physical level, right? The physical level where you start feeling the tension and the restlessness dissolving. And only then you realize, boom, I am touching on that level of relief and surrender. So this process demands surrender. We can't surrender on the level of intellect. We can start there, but progressive surrender happens in layers. When you go through the emotions and you grieve, and you feel like why life can take you to your knees sometimes. Why? Or why, why business has to go through such hard experience. Why you're not where you thought you're gonna be. So you want to get just honest with those feelings to get them out, to touch into the depth of your human experience. And then on a physical level, that's your opportunity to surrender to your higher self, to the divinity in you, to the higher power. And how you know you truly surrendered, there is this, your body releases the last grips of tension, right? So that's the process of it. That's the process, kind of like the alchemical process of it. What you are learning through this experience, you are learning the power of trust. Again, not intellectually. You are developing trust muscle in the most embodied way. And I love going back, when I'm in this portal of death, which is a paradigm shift. I'm about to be shown a whole new reality. I'm about to be given a new understanding of human experience. I'm about to be offered a new way to lead, to serve, to express my voice. But for that, I get to leave the old behind, right? And I get to learn to trust in a whole new way, in an embodied way. So trust is a very physical experience again, right? You go through those three levels. Mental understanding. Yes, life is benevolent. But how do I know until I really go through one of those dark portals where it seems like nothing left but only my trust to a higher reality? So you get to experience that primal trust that can happen only in the body, right? So when you are going through this dense human experience of disillusion of your old self, you also have an opportunity to meet your dark nature, your shadow, right? And to love it and to embrace it and to realize the universality of the human experience, to realize that every human being on the planet will feel profoundly lonely at times, deeply helpless, vulnerable, exposed, right? Feeling abandoned, even. And this is how we heal these aspects of our psyche that have been wounded or traumatized in childhood. So, this is the process of death. It teaches you how to face your fear, it teaches you how to look at your dark nature, the parts of you that want to feel, you know, the parts of you that want to stay in resistance and to fight the experience. And the way that I'm learning to work with these aspects of myself is first to acknowledge that they're there, right? To acknowledge you are here, you're part of my human experience. And then the second, to welcome it and to learn to love yourself through that holy mess, holy metamorphosis. To love yourself when you don't feel the vision, to love yourself when you feel incredibly inadequate, to love yourself when you don't feel powerful or confident, right? That's how we truly practice self-love and self-acceptance. The second tool that I'd like to offer you that is very, very crucial is asking for help, asking for support, but not just from anybody. Remember, when you go through the process of death and deep transformation, you feel incredibly vulnerable. You may even feel embarrassed to ask for help, right? Asking for help may feel be even more exposing. I encourage you to reach out to your soul friends. I wouldn't advise you to bring this metamorphosis to your romantic partner. You can share with your partner that you're going through something, you're going through the alchemy, but I would really keep your romantic partnership. I would not turn to your romantic partner as your alchemist, right? And I'll share with you why. But I would encourage you to go to your soul friend, somebody who's been with you through thick and thin, right? Somebody who can hold big enough space, somebody who is also on alchemical path, somebody who can simply be with you and help you move energy, somebody who is intuitive, somebody who can be with you and hear you, right? This is very, very important to reach out, to ask for help from your soul friends. And you know what's so beautiful is your soul friends, they feel loved and needed when you reach out for help and for support. And it gives you that sense of, validation that what you're going through is not crazy. You didn't do anything wrong. You're going through the fog and you just need somebody's lamp to shine the light on the next few steps. Aloha, aloha, dear souls. So this is the few threads that I wanted to share with you. And why does it matter? Because year 2025 is going to be a year 9. It's a completion of the cycle, completion of last 9 years. So there's going to be a lot of endings. And we human beings are not really good with endings. We like to hang on to what we know. Even though the promise of the freshness of new beginning, the promise of a new relationship with life, the promise of a much bigger expression, right? A more fearless, authentic voice. Even when we know every ending is the path to a new beginning, there is this part in our human psyche that resists the ending. So, year 2025, there is going to be a lot of ending, divine souls. If you are in service to others, if you are healer, teacher, practitioner, advisor, and guide, you got to be ready for this. You got to know this map, that there's going to be a cycle of completion for a lot of people. And those people who have the tools and perspectives and daily spiritual connection, they will go through a cycle of completion with more inner strength and clarity. But there's going to be a lot of unprepared people who may feel stuck and frozen in descent, right? And not being able to get out of it. And this is what happens when we don't understand the alchemy of death. If we don't understand what's happening, we can try to simply keep being busy. Even everything is shifting, everything is turning upside down. There's going to be people who will just keep on using their willpower to move through it, right? Or to numb themselves out, right? So it's even more addictive behaviors, right? To distract themselves from the discomfort of not seeing the path forward. So I find this very important to name this and to address that, because as a Western culture, we don't really celebrate emptiness. We don't celebrate the process of dissolution. We don't celebrate death, right? Here in the West, we only celebrate fullness. We only celebrate achievement and wins and new beginnings. But without the transformation of the old, how can we bring the new? How can we bring the new? So here's my message to you. If you find yourself, or when you find yourself on the next threshold where you don't see the vision, where suddenly everything becomes veiled, and what used to work for you before doesn't work any longer, and your inspiration is gone, and it's a terrifying feeling, unnerving feeling, all I can say to you is that it's a process that is divinely orchestrated for the growth of your soul. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not abandoned by life. You're given an opportunity to receive a paradigm shift of how you see yourself, how you choose to lead, and what kind of initiative you're going to take. I also see this alchemical death as a shock to our system that is needed to shake the foundations that became too rigid. The comfort zone does not inspire our greatness. Sometimes we can become so cozy in our comfort zone, even if we are bored, unfulfilled, dissatisfied, right? Silently enduring, going through the motions, but we are safe. It's predictable. So your higher self will use the process of shock, right, to shock you into alertness, into realization that you can't continue in the old ways. If you are able to move through the shock and become a centered eye of the storm, leaning on the tools that I've named earlier, you'll be given an opportunity to move through this wormhole, right? It's this quantum gateway to a completely new reality. Now I want to tell you a story. How is this resonating with you? Let me know. Let me know, darlings. What resonates with you? It's such a it's such a powerful it's such a powerful process because I really wanted to share with you a myth. I tell a lot of myths. Why? A myth is not an old fairy tale that needs to be told. A myth is universal truth that that is given to us so we can orient ourselves to a larger reality. We can orient ourselves to a larger reality. We can lift up above our personal struggle and to connect to a larger perspective, right? It's like this opportunity to zoom out from our own personal melodrama, our personal movies, zoom out to see what is going on a larger scale. So I'd like to share with you the myth and the story of the goddess Isis. Yeah, the goddess Isis comes to us from ancient Egyptian lineage and ancient Egypt. The golden time of ancient Egypt was one of the most glorious civilizations where their opulence and spiritual enlightenment were equally flourishing, right? And ancient Egyptians had that experience in their life because they had divine guides. They had these teachers from other dimensions that came to them and taught them the mysteries of the universe. Literally, gods were incarnated into the ancient Egypt to guide that civilization, and one of those goddesses was Isis. And her story began with goddess Isis taking a human incarnation, becoming a woman. A goddess becomes a woman to bring these star wisdom to humanity, to help humanity develop. And the story of Isis begins with incredible, glorious beginning. She, with her true love, with her love of her life, Osiris, are rulers of Egypt. And everybody adores them. God, Isis, Queen Isis, travels all over Egypt, teaching people the arts of healing and magic and how to weave and how to parent children and how to heal, right? So the Queen Isis travels everywhere and empowers her people. Her husband Osiris is the ruler of Egypt, and he teaches people the art of agriculture. And they are living in the most beautiful palace, and the country is prospering, and they are in this divine union with each other. You know, they are having it all. They're at the peak of their life. They're at the peak of their creativity and sovereignty and mastery, and a true example of benevolent leadership. Here's Goddess Isis, right? But not everybody loved Osiris and Isis. There was somebody in the myth who grew more and more resentful towards them. And not only that, began to plot a conspiracy or an attack against them. And to make this story short, if you don't know the story of Isis and Osiris, it's a really profound one. But there was a sacred adversary. And remember, when we are studying a myth, every part of the myth can be a teaching for our human incarnation. So there was this being in the myth, brother of Osiris, right? Who grew more and more resentful who just allowed evil in his heart and began to plot against his own brother. And when there was an opportunity to orchestrate his plan of attack on Osiris, he did it in a way that was truly shocking for everybody, right? He threw a feast for Osiris. And he says, brother, there has never been a ruler like you. I want to throw a celebration in your name. We're going to bring the most amazing musicians and the most amazing dancers. Let's celebrate. Let's dance in your honor. And Osiris, in his innocence, says, thank you, I receive. Thank you, brother. And they come to the celebration, and everybody's getting more and more in a celebration mood, right? And this is when Seth, who was the brother of Osiris, stands up and probably gives a toast to Osiris. And then he says, you know, brother, there has never been a ruler like you. I want to give you a gift. I created this incredible box that is only fit for the king. And you know what, Egyptians were unique. They were obsessed with the afterlife, and they were preparing to meet death since they were kids, right? Death was not a taboo in their culture. Death was something you had to prepare, something that you really get to be ready for. So the pharaohs were preparing for death by creating these beautiful burial containers, these amazing sarcophagus, right? So when Seth, the brother of Osiris, offered him this beautiful sarcophagus, beautiful container, Osiris, in his innocence, was willing to step into it to try to make sure it fits him. And when he did, that's the moment Seth seized it and called in all the other people that he talked into that plan, and the box was sealed, and Osiris was killed on the spot. It's a very long myth, and I could tell you that myth for an hour, but I wanted to give you the key points. The key points is betrayal can be a part of our experience on the human plane. Loss can be a part of our human experience, right? Everything just goes upside down can be a part of our human experience. And those experiences come to us not as a punishment, not as, even as karma, I would say, positioning my body, but as an opportunity to activate our hidden, dormant leadership potential. Because when Osiris was assassinated like that in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, his queen, Isis, was no longer safe. She had to flee her own queendom because her brother Set just took over, right? Just imagine the sovereign queen, a goddess, was given this experience. So if a goddess is given this experience, it tells us something, that initiations of this nature are a part of maturation for those of us who feel called to be a leader, to walk this path, right? So the Isis teaches us that the wings like this is what happens when you alchemize your pain into power, where you learn to trust the process of dissolution, where you learn to be in unknown and in emptiness, where you learn to face your fears one by one. Her wings symbolize this phoenix rising from the ashes. And when you study her myth, when she was forced to flee her own queendom and to hide from her own brother, who was possessed with jealousy and this evil in his heart. The first thing that she did, she went to the desert and she began her grieving process. And she cut her long hair. She had a very long braids and she cut her long hair. And she entered grief. She put ashes on her face and she began to wail, like cry deeply, right? So this is an example of a goddess going through a somatic release process. She's not holding stoically things. She's not saying, nobody needs to see me in breakdown. No, she goes to the desert and she collapses there and she grieves and she cries and she puts ash on her face, right? But once she moved through her grieving process, she begins to call her allies. She begins to call the sacred birds and the animals and the wind and the spirit of the water and the fire, right? And she's wandering through the desert and she is finding another queendom, and she's seeing the opportunity to ask for support from another queen. A queen asks another queen for support. And this myth teaches us so much, that the death is a part of our human journey. And we're going to go through these cycles of deep transformation. And if we are here to develop our true potential, we get to prepare for it. We get to embrace these cycles and we get to speak about them more openly instead of not, right? So what I can share with you is what Isis teaches us is that love always prevails. And out of many trials, Isis never gives up. Queen Isis never gives up. She conquers one obstacle just to be met with another obstacle. She finds a safe space just for her brother Seth to find her again. And she is running and she is overcoming these obstacles, but she never, ever gives up. And her connection to the magic, her ability to lean into the mysteries, into the rituals, and her communication with her guides, like God Thoth was her teacher, right, is what carries her through. So again, every part of the myth is a teaching. When we are going through a transformative experience such as death and rebirth and the alchemy of that, what is needed is our connection to the magic of our soul, our connection to our masters of light who work with us, our connection to nature, our connection to our calling, to our why. Because when Queen Isis was going through all that suffering and all those challenges, she never lost sight of her true aim. Her aim was to find the body of her husband and to give the body of her husband a proper burial. So according to ancient Egyptian tradition, his soul could move through the underworld, right? And she never lost that aim, no matter how many obstacles that she was going through. When we go through a depth of transformation, what is really important is to connect to your calling, to your life mission, to your soul calling. And when you are in the emptiness, when your vision is cloaked and you don't see your way forward, this is the time to sit down and write your life manifesto. Write down your soul principles. Write down what you live for and what you're willing to die for. And this is the time for most authentic writing, for most authentic expression that can come through, because there is nothing to hide, there is nothing to prove, there is nothing to pretend. It's you, raw, naked, in your human experience. And that's how the alchemist is working through death and rebirth. Because the rebirth is on the other side. Just how that sudden fog comes into your life and spirit just stops everything, just like that, spirit releases the perceived limitation and constriction, and boom, the sun is rising and inspiration is back, and you feel this new self is coming online, coming through. It takes incredible sense of compassion for yourself. I would say a big part of the experience every time I go through these descents, it teaches me empathy. It teaches me how to be a compassionate human being and how to be a more attuned guide, right? Because if we don't know the depths of this experience, how can we hold space for somebody who is going through a process of ultimate ego death and disillusion? The only true guidance is through embodiment. So this is another gift of this alchemy. You become more embodied leader, more embodied human. You begin to see the beauty of human experience, and you begin to reconcile the paradox of knowing yourself as divine, knowing yourself as immortal soul, and also knowing yourself as human, vulnerable, exposed. And you begin to love this paradox. You begin to smile and to appreciate. You begin to love whatever is at limitation in your life. Every limitation in our life is an opportunity to transform it into a limitless expression. So whatever restrictions, limitations that you have, a natural tendency is to resist it and to fight against it. But that's not how you alchemize it, not how you transform it. You've got to turn it around and open your eyes and you say, this limitation is for a reason. What is it teaching me? What is it showing me that I get to embody, express, open, unveil within myself? So this is my share on death as a paradigm shift and the alchemy of this rapid transformation. I use the word intense, but because I like intense experiences, I'm going to admit it publicly. I do enjoy them. You know why? Because life is never boring. On the other side of intensity is aliveness, right? The worst feeling is the quiet desperation and being in limbo without any aliveness. So embrace the shocks that are given to you by life and see the beauty that even the goddess who took form as a queen had to have a full range of experience. She had a glorious queendom and being loved by everyone and being with her true match, to experiencing betrayal, exile, obstacle after obstacle. And her love conquered all. And her story has been told for thousands of years and will continue to be told. Because this is the story of human soul that is capable of so much, that is capable to overcome the most intense resistance and obstacles and limitations and to rise from any ashes. This is why we keep telling these myths, because they give us a blueprint for transformation. Does anybody has a question that you would like to ask? I have a few minutes. Thank you for receiving this share, beloveds. I find that it's such a universal experience to go through descent and to go through the fog in your life that brings up self-doubt and a sense of inadequacy and confusion. But everything moves and everything vibrates. And if you can find that stillness within you, and if you can find soul friends that can hold space for you when you really need it, and if you can lean in your rituals and daily practices to stay grounded, because when you go through a process of death and rebirth, it's very easy to become ungrounded and go straight into your head and spin, right? And make it way worse than it is. And that's what happens when we are not grounded in our essence. We begin to spin, and our ego just takes over and creates all these fearful stories. So you need to ground yourself in nature, in your practice, in finding a space where you can pour your heart, and preferably it's somebody neutral, like your soul friend, not your romantic partner. I'm not saying you don't need to tell everything to your romantic partner. Please do what feels right for you. But I feel when you go through the depth of alchemy, it's such an inner process that you need a neutral person to hold space for you. That's my perspective on this. And embrace the journey. And I hope everything that I've shared, or some what I've shared, supported with you. And may you keep your eye on this new version of you that will continue to be rebirthed. And the gift of this experience is authenticity and your authentic light that only becomes stronger and stronger and stronger with each rebirth. And one phrase that I like to offer you, just gonna close the door. Hold on. These sounds of life. I was talking to a dear soul brother of mine who held space for my transformation. And he said, you know, sister, you can ask your higher self to be more graceful on your descent. Just how when you are in a plant medicine ceremony, when the force is too strong, you can ask for it to lighten. You can ask your higher self to lighten the pressure, a pressure cooker in a way. And I do that, and I find that my higher self responds and eases the alchemical pressure. So if you are being put through the pressure cooker and it's just too intense for your psyche, you don't need to soldier on. You don't need to just stoically endure it. You can use prayer, spoken out loud. Talk to your higher self and just say, your higher self, I am here for it. I receive my lessons. I want this gold of alchemy. Can you please turn down the intensity? Can you make this transition more graceful for me? And see how it is, because I find this is a profound way of asking for support, right? With your higher self. Your higher self doesn't want you to suffer. It wants you to transform, right? So you can collaborate with your higher self and you can say, I request a more graceful transition. And what I can assure you, with every cycle that I've been through these, I've been through so many of these, there is always the unveiling of new paradigm. Not only you become more authentic, more relatable to your people that you serve, you see the world with new eyes. This is the gift of the rebirth. It's a whole paradigm shift. However you saw yourself and your service and your vision before, suddenly you see everything new, everything different. It's just how a mother who is going through a childbirth, and the childbirth is a mess, there is a blood, there is pain, but the moment the baby's in the hands, everything is forgotten and there is this bliss of this new life. This process is very similar like this, right? When you're going through the birth of a new self, all you feel is contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion. You're like, when is gonna end? But then your suddenly everything shifts and your new self is born, and the pain of the process or the confusion and the restlessness of the process just begins to fade away, and you say, it was worth it. That's my final words of encouragement for everybody who is moving through this or who will be moving through this. It's a part of a human experience. Thank you for your presence. I will see you